Continuing reading in English. Straparola, Italian writer from the middle of 16th century that collected lots of fairy tales from Central European countries, mostly from Italy, Sicily, and Switzerland. Second night. And English is my second language. So it all sounds very weird, especially because this is a translation from Italian. And translation that was done, as I see, mostly for educational purposes, not for making a great fairy tale. But still, it's very interesting. The rumor of Salarde's splendid hospitality came before long to the ears of the ruling prince, the Marquis of Montferrat, who, when he saw that the newcomer was a handsome young man, well-born, rich, of courtly manners, and ready for any gallant enterprise, took him into high favor, and would seldom let a day pass without seeing him. At last, so great was the influence of Salardo over the Marquis, it fell out that anyone who wanted a favor done to him by the latter would always manage to let his petition pass through Salardo's hands. Wherefore, Salarda, mindful of the favor he enjoyed, was ever eager to devise some new pleasure for his patron, who, as became a young man, was much given to field sports, and kept a great number of falcons and hounds for the chase, and all appurtenances of venery, worthy of his high estate. But he would never go hunting or hawking, save in the company of Salarda. One day Salarda, being alone, began to consider the great fortune which had befallen him through the favor of the prince, and by his thoughts turned to his son, Postumius, who, discreet and dutiful and upright and graceful he was. Ah, he said to himself, my poor old father was indeed sorely in error about these precepts of his. He must, like many old men, have become imbecile with age. Either this cause or some frenzy must have urged him to command me so particularly not to adopt a strange child as my own, or to become the subject of an absolute prince. I now see the folly of his precepts, for what son born to a father could be more sober, courteous, gentle, and obedient than Postumius, who I have adopted? And where should I find greater affection and more honorable treatment than is given to me by the Marquis, an absolute prince, and one knowing no superior? And exalted as he is, he pays me so much worship and love that it seems sometimes as if I stood in the highest place, and he in one beneath me. Of a truth I know not what to think of it. Of a truth it is a common trick of old people to forget the tastes and inclinations of their youth, and to lay down for their children rules and regulations, imposing thereby burdens which they themselves would not touch with the tips of their fingers. And this they do, moved not by love, but by the craving to keep their offspring longer in subjection. No, because I have disburdened myself of two of the pledges imposed upon me by my father without any evil consequence, I will quickly get rid of the third, for I am assured that when I shall be free from it, my dear wife will only love me the more. and she herself, whom I love more than the light of my eyes, will give ample proof of the imbecility or even madness of wretched old age, which finds its chief joy in imposing with its dead hand intolerable restrictions on the living. Truly, my father must have been insane when he made his will, for to whom is my trust due, if not to her, who has left her home and kinsfolk, and became one of one heart and soul with me? Surely I may confide to her any secret, however important it may be. So I will put her fidelity to the test, not on my own account, for I doubt it not, but to prove her strength, and to give an example to those foolish ones who rate disobedience to the wishes of dead and god-daughters as an unpardonable thing. In this term Salardo girded his father's wise injunctions, and deliberated how he might best rid himself of them entirely. After a little he left his house and went over to the mews at the palace, where the falcons of the Marquis were kept, and of these he took one, which was a great favourite of its owner, and secretly conveyed it to the house of a friend of his whose name was Francesco. He handed over the bird to his friend, and begged him, for the sake of the love there was between them, to hold it for him till the time should come, when he might disclose the object of his request. Then, when he had returned to his home, he took a falcon of his own, and having privately killed it, he bore it to his wife, saying, Theodora, my beloved wife, I, as you well know, find it hard to get a moment's rest on account of the many hours I am compelled to spend in attendance on the Marquis, hunting or fowling or jousting or in some other sport, and sometimes I hardly know whether I am dead or alive. Wherefore, to keep him from spending all his time over the chase, I have played him a trick. He will relish but little. However, it may perhaps keep him at home and give us another some repose. To this his wife said, And what have you done? I have killed his best falcon, Salardo replied, the favourite of all, and when he looks for it in vain, I believe he will die of rage. And there he lifted his croak, and took out the falcon which he had killed, and having handed it over to his wife, directed her to have it cooked for supper. When Theodora heard this speech and saw the dead falcon, she was deeply moved to grief, and turning to Salardo reproached him severely for his foolish jest. For what reason have you committed such a grave offence, she said, and put such an insult on the Marquis, who holds you so dear, and heaps such high favour upon you, and sets you above all others? Alas, Salardo, I fear our ruin is near. If, peradventure, the Marquis should come to know what you have done, you would assuredly be in great danger of this. Salardo answered, But how can he ever know this? The secret is yours and mine alone, and by the love you have borne and still bear me, I pray you be careful not to reveal it. For if he should learn it, our ruin would be complete. Have no fear of this, said Theodora. I would rather die than disclose it. The falcon was cooked and served at supper, and Salardo and his wife took their seats, but the lady refused to eat of the bird. So Salardo, with gentle words, enticed her thereto. At least, as she remained obstinate, he gave her such a buffet on the face that her cheek became scarlet from the blow. Therefore she began to weep and lament bitterly, that he should thus misuse her, and at last rose from the table, muttering beneath her breath that she would bear in mind that blow as long as she might live, and that in due time she would repay him. When morning was come, she stole early from her bed, and hastened to tell the Marquis of the falcon death, which news so fired him with rage that he ordered Salarde to be seized forthwith, and to be hanged without trial, and all his goods to be divided into 3 parts, of which one should be given to his wife as accuser, another to his son, and the remaining one to the man who should act as hangman. Now Postumius, who was now a lusty well-known youth, when he heard his doom and the disposition of his father's doom, and the disposition of his goods ordered by the Marquis, ran quickly to Theodora and said to her, Mother, would it not be wiser for me to hang my father myself, thus gaining the third of his goods, which would otherwise pass to a stranger? And to this Theodora replied, Truly, my son, you speak well, for if you do this, your father's riches will remain with us, in fact. So Postumius went straight away to the Marquis to ask leave to hang his father, and thus earn the hangman's share, which boon the Marquis graciously allowed. Now Salarde had confided the whole of his secret to his faithful friend Francesco, and at the same time had begged him, when the hangman should be ready to do his work, to go to the Marquis and beg him to let Salarde be brought before him, and graciously to listen to what he might have to say in his defense. And Francesco was loyal in carrying out this request. Meantime, the wretched Salarde, loaded with fetters, was awaiting in prison the hour which should see him led to a disgraceful death on the scaffold. Now I know, he cried with bitter weeping, that my good old father, in his wisdom, gave me those precepts for my profit. He gave me sage counsel, and I, senseless rebel as I am, cast it aside. He, mindful of my safety, warned me against my domestic enemies, and I have delivered myself into their hands, and handed over to them my riches to enjoy. He, well skilled in the disposition of despots, who in the space of an hour will love and hate, exalt and abase, counselled me to shun them. But I, as if eager to sacrifice at once my substance, my honor, and my life, thrust my head into the jaws of this Marquis, and put my faithless wife to the proof. Ah, Salarde, better had it been for you to follow in your father's footsteps, and let others seek the company of princesses. Now I see into what strait my foolish confidence in myself, in my wife, in my wicked son, and above all, in this ungrateful Marquis had led me. Now I see the value of the love of this prince for me. How could he deal more cruelly with me than by robbing me of my goods, my life, and my honor in one blow, showing thus how his love has turned to hate? I recognize now the truth of the proverb which says that a prince is like wine in a flagon, sweet in the morning and sour at eve. Where is flow my nobility and my kinsman? Is this the end of my loyalty, uprightness, and courtesy? Oh, my father, I believe that dead sought you be, when you gaze into the mirror of eternal godness, and see me about to be hanged, because, forsooth, I disbelieved and disregarded your wise and loving counsel, you will pray to God to have compassion on my useful years. And I, your disobedient and ungrateful son, pray to you also for pardon.